seated. Good morning. On this glorious summer day, we find ourselves in the second week of the season of creation, a time that continues to invite us to embrace a deep spiritual conversion, a time when we shift our focus towards all of God's creation as a sacred reality, and a time to reflect upon the earth as an important revelatory expression of the divine. In today's first scripture reading, and in the chapters that precede it, wisdom, aka Sophia, begins by admonishing the people of Israel, encouraging them to resist the temptation of sin and rather receive her instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, in order to find the knowledge of God, and warns of the calamity that will result from not heeding her knowledge. Wisdom can be understood as a deep experiential or heart knowledge that enables one to discern actions appropriate to a specific context that will further the common good of all life. Wisdom's words are perhaps more relevant now than ever before, and make no mistake about it, we cannot be complacent. There is a sense of urgency about her as she cries out in the streets, raises her voice over the hustle and bustle in the squares and corners, as she cries out from the tops of walls to make sure her voice is heard, and as she speaks at the city gates to ensure everyone who passes her will hear her message. So, what would she be crying out at us in today's context? You might wonder, how is her message relevant to the seasons of creation? Given time to reflect, I imagine that many of us might agree that we find ourselves at a critical crossroads. As we face a time of unprecedented challenges that has become described by many as a polycrisis. We can either continue on our path towards increasing exploitation, inequality, and destruction, threatening both human civilization and the entire web of life upon which we depend, or, as the Earth Charter reminds us, we may choose instead to form a global partnership to care for the earth and for each other. The threat of ecocide poses an ethical challenge which calls us to rethink our relationship to nature, to perceive the divine wisdom manifest in creation, and to act cooperatively and co-creatively with all other living beings and the ecosystems that support them, in order to ensure a viable future for all life. Indeed, wisdom is particularly important in times of crisis, when a clear path to ecological regeneration and collective well-being may be difficult for us to imagine. Leonard Boff, a modern theologian, posits that while the current existential crisis we face has economic, political, and technical dimensions, the threat of ecocide at its core is an ethical and spiritual crisis. More specifically, it is an ecological crisis and not just an environmental crisis. Indeed, part of the problem lies in the fact that we mostly perceive the environment as something out there that surrounds us and that somehow is separate from us, when in reality, the world that environs us, that is around us, is also within us. We are not just on the earth, but rather we are a unique expression of the earth. We are formed from Earth's elements, her water, her carbon, minerals, and the DNA that we share with all living creatures. And as such, we are part of a greater earth community. We are, in fact, one aspect of the earth that in this phase of her evolution has begun to feel, to love, to think, to reverence, and to care. The word human comes from the word humus, meaning fertile earth. And similarly, in Hebrew scripture, the name Adam, meaning human, derives from the word Adamah, meaning soil. So the earth's wisdom is integral to who we are as humans. Boff further suggests that we need to learn how to experience this reality as a sacred reality and to live an authentic, genuine ecology. The logos, or wisdom, there she is again, of the oikos, our common home, the earth. Home implies a sense of belonging, of being a part of, rather than apart from, a community of living beings. Our crisis is ecological because it is a crisis of relationships. The relationship of humans to each other, the relationship of humans with the more than human community that we share this planet, and ultimately our relationship with the Creator, who loves and sustains all. Theologically, how is God actively present in creation? How can the wisdom of the earth and the voices of its myriad beings help to bring about in us a metanoia, a Greek word meaning a profound conversion of heart, mind, and spirit that will serve to guide our struggle for a more just, sustainable, and meaningful way of living? How can we extend our empathetic horizons to appreciate all of Earth's matter for more than just its instrumental value to serve us, but rather for its intrinsic value as an integral part of the interconnected web of life that sustains us and reveals God's glory? How can Earth's wisdom help us to relinquish the misconception that the earth is just a collection of objects, and instead embrace the reality that all God's creation constitutes a community of subjects, where the pronouns I and it are joyfully replaced with I and thou? And finally, how might we attune ourselves to this ecological wisdom in ways that inform our role as Christians and promote an integral approach to healing of the earth? Beginning on October 22nd, I have been invited to lead participants attending the OMG Tuesdays in these very discussions. Over 5 afternoons and evenings, we will explore a number of topics that will provide us with new and valuable insights, from Christian theology, indigenous wisdom traditions, and contemporary science, which will be further explored in the small group discussions. Practicing Christian and historian Lynn White Jr., way back in his 1967 article, The Historical Roots of the Ecological Crisis, argued that the ecological crisis is the result of Western Christianity's anthropocentrism in combination with the 19th century synthesis of science and technology. So we will begin with how a misinterpretation of Genesis has led to a radical disconnect between humans and nature, and how this disconnect has further legitimized the abuse of nature. The good news is that White's article promoted contemporary Christian theologians to examine this accusation very carefully and critically, which led to the establishment of ecological theology, or eco-theology, as an attempt to retrieve and reclaim the ecological wisdom inherent in Christianity, in an attempt to reinvestigate, rediscover, and renew the Christian tradition in the light of the challenges posed by the ecological crisis. So we will review the teachings of early church saints and mystics that understood all God's creation as revelatory. We will also look at the contribution of contemporary Christian theologians in response to the climate crisis, those such as Father Thomas Berry. We will look to indigenous wisdom that understands the interconnectedness and interdependence that we have with the land, and what postmodern science has learned about the fundamental dynamics of the universe that have informed its 13.7 billion years of evolutionary history, a process now understood as cosmogenesis. We will explore how these lessons can reignite our sense of awe and wonderness for the universe that we inhabit, and inspire a change in lifestyle that will lead us towards a more mutually enhancing relationship with the earth, so that we will ensure a sustainably viable future for our children, that for them is actually worth inheriting. In the meantime, I would like to remind you of last week's sermon and also take this opportunity to encourage you to spend as much time as you can in the natural world, being attentive to the diversity of its flora and fauna, the seasonal changes, as the colorful splendor of autumn declares itself around us, to take the time to appreciate its gifts and the beauty revealed in its transition from summer to winter. I encourage this because I truly believe that divine wisdom is manifest in all creation and not just in humans alone. So I think wisdom in today's scripture reading is reminding us of a fundamental universal truth. In the words of the famous psychoanalyst James Hillman, what evokes love is beauty. What you love, you apprehend as beautiful. And when you find something beautiful, love pulls you towards it. Its beauty holds you, and you move quietly from attraction to contemplation. As Thomas Aquinas wrote, beauty arrests motion. This connection between ecology, love, and beauty means that an awakened aesthetic and empathetic sense is the most practical way of defending God's creation. This evokes our love for it and our desire to keep it safe, well, and forever. Thank you.